Welcome back to our 17th Economic Development Conference, our first virtual ever. Before I introduce the Law and Economics panel discussion, I just want to thank our sponsors. We have Charter, Spectrum, PG&E, Bank of America, SoCal Gas, Southern California Edison, Ocwen, Bank of California, Pacific Western Bank, Mechanics Bank, DoorDash, First Republic Bank, Tri-Countries, Pacific Premier Bank, Commerce Home Mortgage, Frontier, Home Free USA, Royal Business Bank, and T-Mobile. I want to welcome our board chair, Jin Sung. She's also the founder and executive director of Oasis Arts International, and of course, our dear friend of National Diversity Coalition, Assistant Attorney General MAKAN DELRAHIM. This is going to be a great panel for interns, for the law students, for anything in the antitrust. So, Ms. Jin, take it away.
Good afternoon, Faith, and thank you for the introduction. I believe we have a little bit of delay from Assistant Attorney General. He's not here yet. Should we just wait just a couple of minutes?
Here directly.
And Jen. Jen, what do you think of the conference so far?
Faith, I was a little bit concerned that we were moving the conference online this year, but what a fantastic conversation that you've been able to lead this morning. Congratulations. And I believe every a person who attended this morning learned something new, something very valuable for their lives, and how they can now be a great support for some of the programs that will be trickling down to our community level. So I just want to encourage everybody who's here. I know there are also a lot of law school students who are participating or attending this particular session to really listen closely to the rest of the conference, because what we're discussing here at the conference is not only meaningful for our communities that we serve, but it really affects so many people across the country. So thank you for your work. This has been a tremendous conference so far.
Maybe if you can talk about the National Diversity Coalition, the work that we do, and the internship program that we have.
Sure, thank you. So those of you who are attending this conference for the first time, National Diversity Coalition is a national advocacy organization that focuses its advocacy platform on corporate social responsibility. And of course, our late General Counsel, Bob Ganesta and Faith, has been carrying this mantle for over 18 years, doing the work in the community, really empowering the voiceless, and thus interacting with different organizations and sectors to bring forth corporate social responsibility. And we this year have a program that's modeled after Bob Ganesta's strong leadership, and we are recruiting high school students that might be able to work with us, and us really serving them to really see how civic engagement works and how their advocacy work will impact their future generation. So we'll talk more about it later in the conference, but we'd love to have more participation from the youth. Thank you.
And I think we have Assistant Attorney General MAKAN DELRAHIM. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you guys have the discussion. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much, Faith. Great to see you, and Jen, good to see you again. Thank you so much for having me. These are interesting times indeed we're living in, and I'm always grateful to be with you. I've very much enjoyed the last 3 or 4 years, our relationship and working together, and you guys have been very kind to have me come and participate with your great program. I'm a huge fan and supporter of what you guys do, not only for the broader community and what you guys help advance, but also in particular the students that you work to help provide them opportunities and expose them to this our process, our government process. There's nothing more important, as the elections this week show. Being engaged in our political discourse is as important as anything we do. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. DELRAHIM. Before we start, I would just like to request that the audience please post your questions for our guest speaker in the Q&A box. It's located on the bottom of the Zoom screen, and the host team will be monitoring it and taking up questions towards the second half of our session. Thank you. I want to welcome everybody who's here to the conversation on law and economics, current antitrust issues in the financial sector with Assistant Attorney General MAKAN DELRAHIM. I'm Jen Sung. I'm the board chairman of National Diversity Coalition. I'm very pleased to host this session. Our guest speaker today, Mr. MAKAN DELRAHIM, is the Assistant Attorney General for the Antitrust Division at the Department of Justice. And he previously served as Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy White House Counsel. His antitrust background covers the full range of industries and issues, including antitrust, media, telecommunications, and technology. He is a former partner in the Los Angeles office of a national law firm, and he previously served in the Antitrust Division as Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Appellate, International, and Policy, where he played an integral role in building the Antitrust Division's engagement with its international counterparts. And he was also involved in both civil and criminal matters. Mr. DELRAHIM has served on the Attorney General's Task Force on Intellectual Property, and as a chairman of the Merger Working Group of the International Competition Network. Mr. DELRAHIM also served as a commissioner on the Antitrust Modernization Commission from 2004 to 2007. Earlier this career, he served as an intellectual property and antitrust counsel, and later in the staff director and chief counsel of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. He holds a bachelor's degree from UCLA, a law degree from George Washington University, and a master's of science in biotechnology from Johns Hopkins University. And he's registered to practice before the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Mr. DELRAHIM, it's an honor to have you with us today.
Well, the honor is all mine, and thank you very much for that very kind introduction.
Yes. While sharing your profile, we learned that you were a lawyer in the private sector and moved on to holding offices of Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey?
Sure. So I grew up in the Los Angeles area in the Southern California. And when I was at UCLA, I was studying the sciences. And I got really interested. I always loved the business and the creative side, and I got interested in the business of biotechnology, which in the 90s is largely in its infancy at the time. And we had a small startup back then near my hometown, which was called Amgen in Thousand Oaks, California, which is now a major company, and another small startup in San Francisco area called Genentech. So I got fascinated by what they were doing. I thought I'd go to law school to learn intellectual property law, and came to Washington. I went to law school at night to become a patent lawyer. And as one thing leads to another, you find areas that you become passionate about, and led me to some private practice, a couple of times in and out of the government at various agencies. I was fortunate to work in all three federal branches of the government, in the legislative, judiciary, and the executive branch, in three different agencies of the executive branch. And it's been an honor of my life, and I'm looking forward to going back to private practice, regardless, I've said, of the outcome of these elections, and look forward to, again, having an opportunity to serve in the public. So I think this is the way our democracy works. It's good when, you know, your average citizen. I was an immigrant to this country when I was 10 years old. I came from the country of Iran back when it had a revolution. And it's great when when our folks get engaged in the policy process. And what's great about what our country has provided is that regardless of where you're from, you can have those opportunities to serve and, you know, be engaged in every issue that affects us. You know, I've had in this particular job, the direction of the antitrust laws as the chief enforcer of the antitrust laws in the United States, which control the free markets. And it's an important job that, you know, you can put your own touches to it, have your own innovations, and but anybody and any student who's listening in could certainly do that, and it's a great to be involved.
Thank you for sharing. I think all the students here are very appreciative of you sharing your personal journey, because many of them would hold multiple jobs in order to finish their degree, and I'm sure they have great aspiration to become a great lawyer like you. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Just listening to your story, you've held some one of the most interesting and influential positions in Washington, D.C. Which one of these positions was most impactful for you personally? And do you believe that you made a difference for the consumers at large?
That's a great question. I've been fortunate to be in a couple of different places. I think, you know, this job certainly, you know, has been the last 3.5 years has been important, just as we've seen with the rise of digital, the globalization of the economy, our role with our international counterparts in a number of industries, whether it's been phone, you know, the T-Mobile Sprint merger, or AT&T Time Warner, or Disney Fox, or most recently, the case we filed yesterday, Visa Plaid, the merger of that, where we went to court to block that. But I also served as the chief counsel and the chief of staff of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's the committee that oversees all of the criminal laws, the intellectual property laws, the antitrust laws, and the confirmation of the Supreme Court justices. So we've seen recently, just within the last month, Justice Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation and that whole process. And before that, Brett Kavanaugh, and before that, Justice Gorsuch, whose confirmation I was involved with. That committee is an important part of our constitutional underpinning, and it was the privilege of my lifetime to serve there for almost 5 years and almost 3 years as its chief of staff. The chairman was Orrin Hatch from Utah at the time, the senator from Utah who served for 42 years. And we were there during very interesting times. It was, you know, a lot of judges, but you know, the confirmation of an attorney general. It was when the president, last time we had a disputed president going to the Supreme Court, in President Bush in 2000, and then 9/11 and the Patriot Act, the Bankruptcy Reform Act. All of those were issues that I personally was very much involved with. I worked closely with, you know, former Vice President Joe Biden, who was a big proponent of bankruptcy reform on behalf of some banks in his home state of Delaware. You know, it was some fascinating experience, and that really helped mold my life. It was a different experience than here. You're here as a law enforcement official, but over there, you get to change and write the laws. And so a completely different experience, but fascinating time. And of course, you know, it's hard to say that when you're inside the White House, and I was deputy counsel to the president and helping set up right at the beginning of a presidential transition, assisting on the staff to help set up the legal apparatus of all of the federal government, including inside the White House, and being involved in the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice. Those were just fun, and you just, you pinch yourself at times, and it's been a blast.
Well, that sounds really exciting. At the same time, very inspiring. I'm sure when students decide to go into the legal sector, of course, they have to take the LSAT and get into a law school and go through the process. But I do believe that there may be some limitations as to what the career path may take them. And so your career really reflects the diverse area where a legal professional can get into. And so in that perspective, how do you view leadership? Was there like a specific mentor that guided you through this process, or were you a self-made leader?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of us come to whatever positions and jobs we have based on a number of factors, family, your culture, how you were raised. I grew up in a very tight-knit family. My grandmother was very much involved in raising me. Because of the revolution, I was actually separated from my mom and my younger sister for 5.5 years. They were stuck in Iran. They couldn't leave. So there was a period of time where you were far, kind of had to grow up. I was 10 years old, and until I was almost 16, I did not see my mother. We speak on the phone, and we thought she was becoming, but until the government allowed her to leave. So those were interesting times. And and I was fortunate. I didn't really have an idea when I came to Washington. I was very much curious about the intellectual property laws and their policies. So I was not political. I applied to both Republicans and Democrats. I just cared about the substantive area. And when I had the opportunity to go work for Orrin Hatch, he was such a great leader. He was somebody I learned from. His ethics, his work ethic, his morality, his sense of right and wrong, and reaching across the aisle, not judging. He worked very closely. He was very good friends with Joe Biden. He's still, he's retired. He's back in Utah now, but he was very close with Joe Biden. He was very close with Ted Kennedy. He was very close with Dianne Feinstein, and all of our staffs were also very close. To this day, we're very good friends with each other. He set an example, and that was an interesting example just in Washington. And you emulate that. And throughout my time, I got to serve with former Attorney General Ashcroft. He's another incredible man of great honor, public servant, governor, Attorney General. And you learn, I think, from each of those people. A lot of times, I got to say, you also learn a lot from bad leaders. In my experience, managers who you go, oh, that's not the way I want to do it. You actually learn more from those who might misbehave in leadership. And then it helps you, guide you to do what you're doing. So throughout I've been fortunate to have had those types of mentors for whom I served. And the very government experience allowed for that. So I'm a big fan of a lot of people not locking themselves in at an early age, and they think, I want to be a rock star, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a, veterinarian. You might, and you should pursue whatever you're intellectually curious to do, and do it to the full extent. And if you don't like it, change. No reason to be unhappy doing something you don't like. So for me, I've been fortunate in that I don't believe I have had a job, or at least that I've stayed longer than 6 months, that I didn't like, and it's felt like a job. And they've been tough, they've been hard. I've had, ups and downs and high pressure and lots of scrutiny, but it's been a absolute blast, because I was always, I felt I was intellectually challenged by everything that we did. So and Washington is a very special place. So I recommend everybody to get involved in the democratic process.
Thank you. Very good. So the theme today, our conversation is current antitrust issues in the financial sector. Can you set the stage by giving a short overview of the U.S. antitrust laws to our audience?
Sure. Just so stepping back, generally the antitrust laws I explain, and I used to teach at Pepperdine Law School as well as an adjunct professor. I would explain somebody who doesn't, maybe is new to antitrust law in general, as it is, you could explain it in three buckets. The first is antitrust law is, and this is criminal, you can't fix prices. So two competitors cannot reach out and say, we're going to fix these prices to the consumer. That is, let's say Ford and GM, they come together and they say, you know what, for all of our trucks, we're going to sell them at $25,000, not a penny less, not a penny more. That would violate the antitrust laws. That's called price fixing. Or dividing up the market. If GM says, I'm only going to sell to consumers west of the Mississippi, and Ford, you sell east of the Mississippi. That's dividing the market. So intuitively, you could see why those are wrong to do. And you earn to go to prison when you do that for us. So most recently, the most public case I brought a couple of months ago is a case in Denver, Colorado that involved, we have now indicted 10 individuals, 3 CEOs who were fixing the prices of chicken. Chicken is a major deal, whether they're selling them to the supermarket or to Popeyes or McDonald's, the price of chicken they were fixing. And if you can fix the price and not compete for a contract by raising prices by 10 cents, we're talking billions of dollars. So we did that. And also in the pharmaceutical area, we brought a number of charges in a court in Pennsylvania criminally against a number of companies. So that's the first bucket of antitrust violations. The second is mergers. This is when big companies, small company, or big company, they merge. This is a good example that everybody would recognize is Sprint and T-Mobile merging. And we basically have, we've had typically 4 cell phone companies, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint. AT&T and Verizon typically have controlled about 75% of the market. T-Mobile and Sprint together may have controlled the other 25% in the US. And the question was, do you do that? So we look at mergers. So Visa is trying to buy a financial technology company called Plaid. And Plaid was going to come in, as our complaint alleges, and compete with Visa for online money transfer. When you go on, let's say, Amazon or whatever, apple.com, and you want to purchase something, you put it on your credit card, of course, they charge a fee to the merchant. And whether you can just transfer money like Venmo from your account, well, that's going to be a lot cheaper than paying 2-3% to the credit card company. So we saw in the documents there was a problem. So is that merger going to lessen competition? Or it's so to the point where prices are going to go up? And then we block that. And mergers that are over $90 or so million, they have to be reported. And then the last one is monopolization. That's the department just brought a lawsuit against Google for monopolizing the search. And that's when a single company is so large that it engages in activity that illegally either keeps their size and market power, or they've gained it illegally. So in the DOJ's case, which I opened, but I've since recused myself because at one point I represented Google in acquiring DoubleClick. But the case there, which is a matter of public record, alleges that they had all of these restrictive agreements that wouldn't let a competitor to come into the search business, and therefore they control over 80% of the search market, which means advertising and blah blah blah, all of those things. So every time you're on your Apple phone, use Safari, you're using Google search. Every time you're, on a whole bunch of other lists, when you're on Facebook, you do search, you're using Google. You may not know it, but you use their search engine. So those are the three buckets of antitrust in general. And the financial services, of course, banks. When banks merge, we get involved along with the Federal Reserve and OCC and FDIC. Sometimes financial services companies fix markets. So most recently, there was a number of criminal cases which brought in over $1 billion of fines and penalties. And this was when the banks agreed amongst themselves to raise the price of the benchmark LIBOR. Now, LIBOR is just, it's the London interbank overnight rate, which a lot of our mortgages or credit cards are based on that. So, let's say, your mortgage resets every year, it's LIBOR plus 2%. And if you can raise the price of LIBOR, you can get more interest rate. So these guys a bunch of traders were fixing that. And we brought charges against them, and criminal and civil, and they paid a lot of money. So that's what we do. We basically, it's really, antitrust is about fairness in the marketplace. If you try to cheat by fixing prices in markets, you are violating the antitrust laws, and you're not competing fairly. Think of it as a race. When two runners start and they run and they compete with each other. If they agree, okay, neither of us are going to really run faster than 5 miles per hour, well, you're not going to have a real race. They're not competing. The result, they say, I'm going to win today, but you win tomorrow. That's not real competition. And in the business world, consumers lose when the businesses don't compete. And our job is to make sure that they compete. And if they get big, they should do it because they're offering a cheaper, a more innovative, a more efficient price or better quality price. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with gaining market share in a free economy. In fact, everybody should want to be big. That's the incentive you get to risk in business. But when you do it illegally, that's when we come down and knock on your door, or more accurately, the FBI starts knocking on your door and we prosecute in court. So I hope that's a good overview of what we do.
That's excellent. So you have described to us the 3 different buckets within the antitrust laws. And I wonder, do you have any specific activities that you target so that your law enforcement efforts can take place? For example, it's an industry specific. I know you had already mentioned technology, banking, and I do believe with FTC in place, there's something very similar type of investigation that can happen. But for Department of Justice, do you have an area of focus?
So the first bucket of the criminal conduct, only the Justice Department prosecutes those. When it comes to mergers in the civil world, we share that jurisdiction, as you correctly stated, with the Federal Trade Commission. And there we do that based on historical experience. So Congress, in some areas, we're the exclusive people. So for telecommunications, transportation, like airlines, trains, and all that, financial, like banks, insurance, only energy, only the Justice Department does that. Everything else, so let's say pharmaceuticals, music, theaters, whatever, then we share jurisdiction between them, and then we have kind of a, we divide up a sandbox sometimes in a not very clear area, but they do. So for example, we do beer mergers, but they do wine mergers. We will do, if it's criminal, we of course do it in pharmaceutical, like I mentioned, but pharmaceutical mergers, they do it. If it's retailers, they do it. Shopping centers, but the other things, we do. So that's kind of how we divide up the jurisdictions. But we are, it's as broad as they come. So we have at least six, well, we have 6 civil sections by which each of them focus on different parts of industry. So we have our defense and industrials and aerospace section. They do, you know, like the Raytheon and United Technologies or Boeing and all that is done in that section. We have our technology and online services section. They do, you know, Google and Apple and all of that. And that's through a recent reorganization. Technology and financial services used to be in the same section. Now it's just technology and online services. Then we have a media and entertainment and communications section. So they're the like broadcasters, Disney, Fox, Comcast, Universal, all of that is done through them. Then we have our healthcare and consumer protection section. So hospitals, CVS, Aetna merging, things like that is done through them. Then we have our financial services and fintech and banking section. That's a new section that I created out of 4 different. So I took credit cards, banks, securities exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange and all that, and I put them all in one. They used to be in 4 different sections. Every one of our sections did a little bit. I brought it all together into one, and that they're the section that does that. So we divide them up each into a different sector and section, you know, there's some great dedicated career staff that that stay on, and I'd say 95% of the antitrust division are just career folks who stay here. They come from law practice or economists, and then the rest 5% is the political leadership. Maybe it's even less than that. Me and my deputies and a few people in my front office.
Very good. You mentioned the fintech banking section.
Mm-hmm.
And with the advancement of technology, there's been significant growth in the digital banking, fintech, cryptocurrency, and all these terms. These are financial platforms that were very foreign to the consumers in the past 10 years or so. But there is a bias in our society that cryptocurrency, for example, is only for the super rich tech people. And I believe that innovation like blockchain will actually help the low-income consumers that National Diversity Coalition serves, and technological advancement is important to our community. Do you believe that community will benefit as a result of these technological revolution in the financial services sector? And if that is the case, do you believe, or do you have any concerns that large financial services incumbents might stifle this innovation?
That's a great question. So let me answer the second one first. As enforcers, we always have to be on the lookout and being concerned about incumbents that are in a market and are entrenched who don't like disruption. You know, of course, you don't like, if you're a business, you don't like competition sometimes if you can get away with it. If you're a good business, you're always competing and innovating to try to gain those new markets. But look, if you're the music industry, you were caught flat-footed by a Napster. And, it took some time until there was a streaming market, which is even now bigger than the previous CD market. But if it wasn't for the technology really disrupting the business model of the music industry, we would still be buying CDs and not having any kind of digital streaming technology. And the same thing in the financial services. I think if you're Visa, you'd like to keep the same rails and make money every transaction. And you don't want money to be transferred outside. Now, crypto provides some really exciting opportunities for money transfer, not just domestically, but internationally. But at the same time, it also provides some challenges for law enforcement when crypto is being used for nefarious purposes. And the Justice Department actually just issued a report about 3 weeks ago, which was done by the Criminal Division and National Security and others, identifying the areas of concern. But the Antitrust Division, I gave a speech and I recognized that blockchain has the opportunity to really increase, by lowering networking costs and increasing authentication, the ability to really open up multiple supply chains, including money. And we need to be on the lookout to allow for that more and more. And so it was the first speech of its kind given by an antitrust official, and it got a lot of attention, but I think we need to be on the lookout for that. And also just other new technologies that are coming on. A lot of us use Venmo, for example, to give money to friends and split checks and things like that. Well, it's a heck of a lot easier and more convenient, but if you start having those processes and get out of the traditional rail, somebody's business model is going to get challenged, and they don't like that. So they might step in, or through the regulatory process, through restrictive covenants, preclude those businesses from taking hold. And ultimately, the consumer could lose by doing that. So you have to be vigilant. These new technologies need to really understand the game. If they innovate of how to gain share in the marketplace, and that's kind of what was part of our job.
Thank you. Mr. DELRAHIM, I absolutely agree that blockchain has the opportunity to lower networking costs and benefit especially our low-income communities, but society at large. And we'd love to have a copy of your speech, not only because it's the first one, but I believe that as an advocacy organization, it's very important that our coalition is in the front lines to educate and really help people understand the benefits of these type of subject matters. I know that there are a couple of questions that came up in our Q&A box, and I'm going to bring them to our discussion. I see number one. How is the DOJ Antitrust Division adapting to the new financial technology service companies, fintech, in order to monitor new developments, mergers, and acquisitions? Kind of
so we are adapting by taking a very close look. This lawsuit we brought against Visa yesterday is a very interesting one. You can take a look and read the documents that were in there, some of the evidence that we cite in the complaint. Wall Street Journal did a nice piece of covering that, and you just have to be vigilant and have the courage to look behind the transaction. So Plaid is an innovative company that was providing a lot of inputs for new fintech companies like Stripe and Venmo and Mint and others. And they were developing capabilities of account authentication and allow for money transfer. And Visa CEO basically said, look, we have to buy this, even though we're paying too much. It's an insurance policy against challenges to our business. We're going to lose $500 million a year if these guys enter our marketplace. And so we brought that case. We'll see how it goes. We filed it in San Francisco. But we need to be aware of new technology. So to do that, what I did about a year ago, last October, a little over a year ago, is we searched, we identified MIT through the MIT's Sloan School of Management, several programs online. And I started the process. One is in blockchain. One is, these are certificate professional programs that people can take online. One's blockchain, one is machine learning, and the other one is artificial intelligence. And I offered it, volunteered to our attorneys and our economists. We have about 52 PhD economists at the Antitrust Division. And I'd say right now, probably about 50 have taken it. Total of our attorneys and economists. A couple of our paralegals stood up and they wanted to, and I said, fantastic, I'll pay for it. So I've paid for each of them to take those courses. And in fact, me and my chief of staff took blockchain together, and we absolutely learned a lot. So you're going to see, I'm going to give yet another speech on machine learning over the next 2 weeks. How we need to be vigilant about the importance of how industry is using it, because if we don't, we don't need to be the experts in these. We're not sitting here coding artificial intelligence and new blockchains, but we need to know about it to be able to ask the right questions and see where the competitive challenges are. And again, this is somewhat innovative. Nobody else has done it, but I have spoken to all of my international colleagues in about 140 agencies now about it as an example. That's something they might want to do. So, I may be plugging MIT, but they've done a really nice online program that I highly recommend if anybody wants to see business applications of those technologies. Both of those programs are really good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that information.
Sure.
Our second question comes from Jessie Wade, and she's a law student at Pepperdine University. And I have been an intern with NDC since June. My first question for today is, when reviewing mergers and acquisition, how does DOJ analyze and consider the way in which the M&A activity reduces wages, cuts jobs, or impacts small businesses and young entrepreneurs?
That's a great question. So we of course look at any M&A to immediately for looking at prices. We look to see if there's a quality degradation. We look to see if there's innovation that would go down, and of course Visa, we allege those. We also look at choice, and so those are all factors that we have to find evidence for. Now, yes, many mergers, when companies merge, part of what they do is they will eliminate some jobs that are duplicative. But it could be that by reducing some of those, they actually increase the company's efficiencies. They may hire more of a different kind. So you may not need 2 CFOs, but if the company is growing, there might be more demand for, data scientists or, writers or something like that. And so, of course, the entertainment industry is going through some challenges. There have been a lot of layoffs, including yesterday announced at ESPN, I think close to 500 jobs. And you have theme parks and studios that are challenged because of COVID over the past year. But we look at that. The other thing we look at is if the merging companies have agreed to set wages or don't poach each other's employees. In fact, we treat those criminally if 2 companies. And through the merger documents, one of the things we have done and have implemented is that through our machine review of internal documents for mergers, we look for keywords to find any kind of wage fixing or no poach arrangements that hurt the labor markets. And we have been quite active in that area.
Thank you. The next question is asking for positive and negative effects have you seen from the increase of both fintech services and cryptocurrency within the United States?
So we have, within the antitrust division, we have not. As I mentioned, I think there's definitely some positive pro-competitive effects that we see. Of course, the negative, we've seen recent criminal charges brought. You saw yesterday, I believe, $1 billion of, cryptocurrencies were seized by the government, by the FBI and the criminal division and national security. There's no question that sometimes these types of currencies can be used for illegal activity, whether it's, illicit sex trades or child pornography or drugs and money laundering. And the challenge is going to be for law enforcement is to continue to be vigilant and identify those. A lot of those are on the dark web. Money is used for terrorism financing. And so, the Treasury Department and our national security divisions are heavily engaged in that type of activity. The Treasury Department, through the Undersecretary of Terrorism Intelligence and Terrorism Financing and Money Laundering, has been quite active. And they've done a nice job of looking at those types of activities. So you've definitely seen the prosecutions, you see the negative side, but I've also said that there's definitely the positive side of creating more efficiencies in the payment system.
Thank you. We have a question here for market competition. How does the DOJ assess for market competition from non-depository financial institutions, savings institutions for small businesses, or credit unions for low-income communities and rural areas specifically?
So one of the first things we do in an evaluation of a merger, for example, is we have to define the economic market. By the economic market, we run tests. You run regression analysis to make sure that you find the market where you create substitutes. So let me give you an example where let's just use pharmaceuticals. You might have a bunch of drugs to lower cholesterol. And, these are, statin drugs that lower cholesterol. And you might have 5 different ones, and each of them might be under cover of patents. Does each one make a market in and of itself? No, because they're substitutes with each other. But if they're not a substitute with, blood pressure medication, that's outside of the market. But if they're within the market and they're substitutes within each other, that constitutes the economic market. So if there's a market for low income or high income, we have to take a look to see, are they providing services to one? So if there's somebody is focusing on the low income banking, are they not providing it to other types? If that's the case, then they become a market unto themselves because that consumer doesn't have a choice. So let's just say your local credit union only provides banking to people who make less than $50,000, and Bank of America in that geography makes, only makes loans and does banking for people who make over $100,000. Well, a consumer cannot go and compete within those two. So those two are not in the same economic market in that crude example. The other thing we look at is geography. So is it within the same geographic market? And, so if you are looking physically, let's say, are there transportation costs? Do people go? A perfect example, we've reviewed a bunch of marijuana mergers, the dispensaries. Despite the questionable, legal standing at the federal level for some of those, but we still review them. We have found that a consumer does not drive 2 hours in order to go buy their medical marijuana. They might drive 15 minutes. And so the fact that consumer's choice, so then we look at the 15-minute radius to find the geographic market, because the dispensary that's 2 hours away is not in the same economic market because it doesn't provide the substitutability. So that's the type of analysis we do within each market. The market we alleged yesterday in Visa Plaid is the online debit market, which is distinct from physical debit, and it's distinct from credit card transactions, because those are different. If you want to do money exchange, that's different from a credit card exchange. And so if you're only doing the debit transactions, and if you're doing online, so because of the pandemic, more and more people are transacting online. So it's its own separate market online because there's merchants that may not be in the physical world. So we were able to define that market as opposed to all transactions for financial services.
Thank you. We're just going to take one more question from the Q&A box. This last question here. The DOJ is known as a regulator of companies. How has the DOJ been contributing to communities throughout the COVID-19 crisis?
Good question. So the first thing is I will just correct the statement that the DOJ is a regulator of companies. We don't regulate like the Federal Communications Commission regulates, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they regulate. We enforce a law, and our law is flexible and it applies to just the free markets. We don't tell companies what to do. We only say, if you've crossed the line, we come in and we're a law enforcement agency rather than a regulator. But put that technicality aside, with COVID, we've done a number of things. First, we moved all of our merger filings online, knowing that physically it's difficult. So we allowed for people to file their Hart-Scott-Rodino, the HSR, which is the filing for a merger, online. Second, when companies want to collaborate, there's a process called a business review letter, where you propose a conduct and you ask us, is it okay if we do this? We want to talk to a consumer. We want to do this. We want to, distribute, masks and gowns together, but here's how we're going to come together. We're going to, or we want to, find a joint solution. We are 6 biotech companies. We compete. However, here we want to come together because we can find a vaccine faster. So those processes typically take 9 months to a year for us to review. I reallocated resources, and immediately when the pandemic was declared in March, I announced that we're going to review those within 7 business days. We have done 4 of those. So Project Airbridge, that brought supplies from abroad internally, like ventilators, masks, gowns. The pharmaceutical companies getting together for distribution for the national strategic reserves. A bunch of biotech companies coming together to do therapeutics through monoclonal antibodies also. And we worked closely with them. And then most importantly, with FEMA and HHS under the Defense Production Act, we gave them advice on how to arrange those agreements. And under the law, one of our attorneys has to be in every meeting with the industry. And with that, they get immunity from the antitrust laws, but they have to follow our advice. So we have been quite active in that area. And one more, we have been involved with the price gouging and any kind of fraud task force that the Justice Department created, which is chaired by the U.S. Attorney of New Jersey, but we're a big part of that and provide the support for any kind of activity that's anti-consumer activity that goes on by people especially during the height of it. And so we've been quite active in that area, both by allowing for certain cooperations to occur and cutting through a lot of the red tape. And our staff have just been fantastic. We were working all throughout, weekends and nights and really turning around. And all of these, by the way, are on our website. If anybody is interested in taking a look at what goes into those letters and the advice that we provide, it's kind of useful guidance. So that's what we have been involved with the pandemic.
Thank you for being responsive to the needs of the people by becoming a solution, even like expediting the process within the current justice. That's excellent. We're closing. We have one more question, as our majority of the audience has been law school students. And so if there's any specific advice that you'd like to give them who want to pursue a legal career in the intersection of law, business, and policy, I think they're all ears.
Well, everybody, I think, will have to judge based on their own specific interest. Like I've said, follow what you get passionate about. That's the most important way to be engaged and enjoy what you do every day, because there's nothing more important than that. And once you do that, you'll find, I think, the material rewards that go along with that, and it's a lot of fun. But I would say, if you're a law student or an undergraduate student, get involved and do as many internships as you can, especially when you're a student, because it's easier to get in. And once you're in, once your people are familiar with your work and you have done a good job, assuming you do a good job, then it's easier down the road for them to entrust you with a position and a job. So look at internships at the local level, at the federal level, in the government. You know, there's many of those opportunities. Don't sit on your hands when you are a student. That's fun. Two, like there's actually formal programs. We have the student law internship program. It's an honor competitive program. I think we select about 60 of them at the Justice Department a year. Their first year, second years, and go online. And a lot of these you have to go online. I think it's like usajobs.gov or something like that. But take a look. You know, you can use Google and look at, you know, internships and honors programs and all of that. Then there is, you know, once you graduate from law school, the Justice Department typically hires this thing called the honors program, where the first year attorneys come in and, you know, or they've gone to work and clerk for a judge, a federal judge or a state judge, and then they apply. It's one of the best trainings you can do. It's more rewarding, I think, than the private sector. I've been in 2 different law firms, and it's great to do that, but it's also great to be in the government. You get to see the process, which also helps you become a better advisor to your clients. And, you know, it's find out what drives you. Do you like, you know, environmental laws? Are you an outdoors person? You want to do park law? Fine. You want to do music? That's interesting. You know, people, a lot of times, especially in Los Angeles, people think, well, I want to be an entertainment lawyer because they think it's glamorous and sexy. Well, if you're doing it in a contract, whether you're doing for entertainment or you're doing it for a lease of an apartment, it's the same darn thing. The work is largely the same. Be a good lawyer. Just because you might represent, you know, Jerry Seinfeld or The Weeknd does not mean you become the celebrity. That's something, misconception, a lot of people, my colleagues sometimes find, but it's interesting and it's exciting work. So pursue whatever you're interested in. You want to do music? Get an internship within the music industry, within the companies, or in the government. We get involved a lot with the various sides of that. So most importantly, really pursue what you're interested in, and that will ensure more happiness. And once you're happy, you'll find the material rewards that go with that. So that's the best advice that I have, because that's basically been my experience.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your great advice for our students. And of course, your work has been tremendous. I've been very inspired listening to you. Not only today, I've been kind of following you in LinkedIn and the type of work that you allow yourself to get engaged. I think that is very prominent. And I haven't seen this many actions take place from Antitrust Division until you came along. So congratulations for really setting the right model for the next Antitrust Division leadership when they come along. But all your comments today was very valuable for our communities and for our future leaders in the legal sector. Thank you very much, Mr. DELRAHIM.
Thank you so much, Jen and Faith, and all of you for what you guys do. I think this is incredible to have you as a resource for the students that you guys host, and also the incredible work that you do to open up markets, particularly for the deserving communities that may not be served. So I always thank you, and I look forward to our continued relationship together.
I hope so. Thank you, Jen. Mr. MAKAN, thank you. I mean, you're an inspiration. You've imposed the law and you've done it well. From you were a victim of racial profiling. When you were in Berkeley, you were separated from your parents, and look at you, Assistant Attorney General of Department of Justice. And you're continuously helping the diversity. And I know that personally, National Diversity Coalition has actually a yearly meeting with the Department of Justice. And I can tell you their focus on diversity and inclusion, their internship program is phenomenal. So for the students that are listening or watching, there's a lot of hope. If Mr. MAKAN DELRAHIM did it, I know you guys can do it. I mean, he's gone through the ringer, and nothing is easy. It's hard work, and thank you so much, Assistant Attorney General DELRAHIM, for the work that you've done for protecting the consumers and for the this antitrust law and people that are price gouging. You've always been protecting us. So I thank you so much on behalf of the constituents of National Diversity Coalition and National Asian American Coalition. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. I have always appreciated that, and you're very generous for that, and I'm grateful to have the time to spend with you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yes, have a great COVID weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll be a break for 5 minutes, and then the next topic will be how to do business with major corporations, supplier diversity. So this is going to be interesting for especially now with the small businesses, and I know there's so many new businesses that are coming out because of pandemic. So we'll be right back.
Hey, can I add one more thing to you? Just
yes.
On that topic, it is in 2 weeks. Keep an eye out. For the first time, we're going to be launching a small business portal on the Antitrust Division's website. That'll be a help center for small businesses to either report interesting activity or to seek help or get a little bit of training. We've never done that through the Justice Department, but we've developed it. It's been a year in process, and we're going to be announcing that and launching that, so your constituents may very well have an interest in that. But keep an eye on the website. I'll be sure I'll have Mike's chief of staff send you a link to it when it's announced.
Oh, perfect timing, because there are so many small businesses right now, or us consumers are price gouging. I mean, all of a sudden, even these virtual conferences, because they know that you don't know this, you've never done this before, and I just see the price gouging and everything. Thank you so much for doing that, and let us know. Thank you. See,
of course.
This is what leadership is all about. I love your leadership.
Bye-bye. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Faith Bautista. Home ownership and operating a small business can be complicated. Here at the National Asian American Coalition, we can help. We're a nonprofit organization focused on strengthening our communities. From providing information about all aspects of home ownership to helping you create a plan for operating your own business. Let us be a resource to help you succeed. Visit NAAC.org.